Hello, I'm Yosu Franco, Strategy and Technology Advisor at WatchGuard Technologies. I'm going to talk about what is becoming one of the most attacked vectors in cybersecurity, the so-called human factor. It's surprising to see that there is no clear definition of the concept in the industry or an analysis framework to determine what are the root causes in case of incidents involving it. So I'm going to try to bring some clarity and propose a definition of what it is. Then we're going to look at the impact of the human factor in cybersecurity incidents. And finally, we're going to try to understand why it is becoming increasingly important and what are the measures we can take to mitigate this risk. We all understand that the human element is the weakest link. It seems that no matter how much technology we throw into some problems, there will always be someone who does the wrong thing or who abuses the company policy. And at the end, the problem is human nature. I love this quote from scientist Edward Osborne Wilson, who said that the problem of humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technologies. And that this is becoming terrifically dangerous, and it is now approaching a point of crisis overall. Now, humans, we do not evolve nearly as fast as technology, and therefore we are stuck with our Paleolithic emotions, which is becoming faster and easier to exploit using these godlike technologies. When I was looking for a definition in the industry, I thought that it should be one that would allow us to track some metrics and to measure the progress that we're making. So that led me to what I think is one of the best resources to analyze data about cybersecurity incidents, which is the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report. This report is published every year, and in the 2020 edition, which is the one that I used, they tracked over 157,000 security incidents, out of which 32,000 met their quality standards. So 32,000 incidents and almost 4,000 confirmed data breaches. It is a report in which there are many institutions, both private and public, participating. So this institution is going to be sending data about the security incidents they see. Now, in order to make some sense of the data, they used a shared language, a shared vocabulary called VERIS, vocabulary for event recording and incident sharing. This common language allows them to describe the security incidents in a structured and repeatable manner. And this is important for us in order to try to come up with a more precise definition of what the human factor is. Now, the VERIS framework is based on a schema. The schema is made of a few parts, such as incident tracking, victim demographics, incident description, discovery and response, and impact assessment. So we're going to choose incident description. And here we have actors, actions, assets, and attributes. We're going to choose actions. And here, I think we're getting closer to our proposed definition. Here we have malware, hacking, social misuse, physical, error, and environmental. And I think that we should focus here on social misuse and error. What is social? This refers to tactics employing deception, manipulation, intimidation to exploit the human element of information assets. So things like phishing, pretexting, that is impersonating someone in order to have the victim do or transfer information that they shouldn't be transferring. Misuse is the use of untrusted organizational resources for purposes contrary to that which was intended. This includes policy violation, abuses, etc. And finally, we have error, which is a broad concept, including anything done or not done incorrectly or inadvertently. Here we may have misconfigurations, misdeliveries, publishing errors, etc. So now that we have the components, we can propose a definition. And this would be my proposed definition, which is unsecure behaviors made by those entrusted with organizational IT resources due to social tactics, to misuse, or to error. At least we have a definition, and now with that we can at least start measuring and analyzing its impact. So if we go back to the data breach investigations report, we can see what percentage of incidents were related to this human factor. And in the 2020 report, we can see that the social element, error, and misused was involved, actually combined, in a majority of the breaches tracked by the report, almost 4,000. So it's definitely the top factor in the data breaches that they tracked. One of them, the error, is actually becoming as common as the social factor and more common than malware, and that is happening across all industries. You can see a big jump, for instance, for misconfigurations in 2019. If we look at social, of course, phishing is going to remain at the top of the charts, and this is also related to the human nature. It's very hard to bring down the click rate past a certain level. So in this report, they measured the average click rate in phishing campaigns at 3.4%. It's actually the lowest in years. But in a sufficiently large organization, and considering the large volumes of traffic of emails, this can be still a very large number. The other element, pretexting, this is involved in this business email compromised, or as they call it, the financially motivated social engineering attacks. Even though the percentage compared to all the incidents is pretty low, the consequences can be very big or very negative for an organization. And the difference between financially motivated social engineering attacks is that they may not involve necessarily the compromise of the email systems. What is the future for the human factor? Well, according to analysts, the importance or the weight of the human factor in cybersecurity incidents is going to increase. According to Gartner, and talking about endpoint security, by 2025, more than 85% of successful attacks will exploit configuration and user errors rather than make use of advanced malware. This is due to the fact that at the endpoints, we will see more and more reductions of the attack surface. So given that we're using all sorts of devices, we will see more approaches like the ones we use in the smartphones, in which it is hard to install an unauthorized application. The application itself is going to come pre-authorized by the store itself. So why is this becoming more important? Well, generally speaking, it is receiving more focus from the attackers. They can get predictable results. If they know that the average click rate is going to be between 3 and 4%, then they know more, or they can estimate what the results of their next phishing campaigns is going to be. Also, evolution of social engineering. There is more open source intelligence than ever before. It is astounding to see the level of detail that we can get from an individual by combining the publicly available data from Facebook, from Twitter, and from LinkedIn all together, for example. Also, there are more sophisticated and clever deception and manipulation technologies and techniques. We're referring to things like deep fakes, which are able to fool even trained users, but even some more simpler techniques. I love this example. For instance, this is a banner designed for smartphones. So the designer of this banner included there some pixels which look like dirt. And in fact, they were included there with a purpose, so that when the user would look at this banner in its mobile device, the first thing that they would do is to scratch on the surface to try to remove that piece of dirt. In fact, they were clicking on the banner. So a very clever and very simple technique which made people do things they really didn't want to do. Also, as we as we see more complexity in our IT systems, in the controls, in the applications, in the environments that that IT needs to look at, there's going to be a higher probability of errors and misconfigurations. So if there is a reduced attack surface, and if the other vectors for entry into the systems are going to be harder for the attackers, what is left for them? Well, we will have vulnerabilities and exploiting the human factor. And in fact, it will always be easier to find new vulnerable humans rather than new software vulnerabilities. Can we fix this problem? Well, there are certainly technologies that can help a lot in mitigating the risk. It won't happen at 100%, of course, but we think that we can greatly reduce this risk. But beyond the technologies, which I'll talk about in the next slide, I think that we can also do better in terms of analyzing the root causes of the human factor. Now, in other industries, they've done already so. In the early 90s, the US Navy had a very high rate of aviation accidents. So they created a framework to analyze the root causes of those accidents, because in many cases there was loss of life. They came up with a framework which analyzes the human factor in 4 different levels of failure. It starts at the bottom with the unsafe acts themselves, so errors and violations, and if you look at it, it looks very similar to the factors, the components that we saw in cybersecurity, so misuse, social, and errors. But they also look beyond that, and they look at the preconditions for those unsafe acts. So things that like the tools and the technologies used, the mental states of those operating, in those cases the airplanes, were they under stress, were they fit for duty. They also looked at supervisory factors. So was there adequate supervision? Were the failures or the broken things being fixed? In cybersecurity, many times we see that even though organizations know they have issues, they don't correct them on time. And lastly, organizational influences, things like the company culture, the operational processes, were there enough resources allocated to these tasks? This framework started in aviation, but is now used in other verticals, such as construction, manufacturing, mining, energy, etc. So why not apply it in cybersecurity? Today, in cybersecurity, when there is clearly a human factor involved, someone was fooled or made an error, at most the person is going to be sent to, let's say, re-education camp and is going to take a training course. But that's it. I think there is lots of room for improving the way in which we analyze those incidents in which the human factor had an important role. What technologies and measures can we use to mitigate the human factor? Well, today there are plenty of technologies which can help us mitigate this risk. When we talk about the social factor, there's definitely training courses, but also good email and web security gateways, zero trust approach for applications, so that unknown or untrusted applications are denied executions, even if the user tries to click on it. Multi-factor authentication, so even if I fall for a phishing campaign and I give away my credentials, if the attacker is trying to use or to access a system protected by multi-factor authentication, they won't be able to access it. In case of misuse or abuse of company policies, this can be a bit harder, but we can still have plenty of visibility about the activity happening at the endpoints. We can see, we can analyze the behavior. We can take a continuous and adaptive risk and trust assessment approach, so that depending on the context of someone trying to access the network, we can apply a more strict authentication mechanism, for example. And errors, we can always keep training people. We can use better security configuration, better visibility, better processes to ensure that people don't make these mistakes, etc. Now, this can be overwhelming. This can be a bit overwhelming. So what we can do from WatchGuard? Well, from WatchGuard, we can help our partners and our end users to take quick steps to make some quick wins easily, mitigating, I would say, most of the risk with the a proven portfolio, and WatchGuard is 25 years old now, and it's already a proven company in the cybersecurity space, providing a cloud-based portfolio which brings together the user, the endpoint, and network security. I would say that with some basic measures, some basic technologies that we can provide, most organizations would be able to mitigate over 90% of their risk. And we will always do that, always with simplicity in mind for our customers and partners. So if you haven't got the chance to see our portfolio, I would invite you to go on and give it a try. Thank you.